In the middle of the 14th century, something unimaginable happened. People went to bed healthy and woke up dying. A mild fever appeared first, then dizziness, then pain, deep, burning pain, followed by dark swellings under the arms, along the neck, and in the groin. By nightfall, entire families were dead. Church bells rang so often that cities stopped counting the bodies. Graveyards overflowed, mass burials became routine. Streets that once echoed with merchants, carts, and laughter fell silent. Across Europe, one question spread faster than the disease itself. Was this the end of the world? They didn't know it yet, but they were living through the deadliest pandemic in recorded human history. This was the Black Death, and once it began, there was no escape. To understand how civilization collapsed so completely, we must first understand what existed before it fell. The world at its peak. The early 14th century was not an age of decline, it was an age of confidence. Europe was thriving. For generations, harvests had been abundant thanks to a long period of warm, stable climate known as the medieval warm period. Food was plentiful. The population exploded. In just 2 centuries, Europe's population had nearly doubled. Cities expanded beyond their ancient Roman walls. Paris, Florence, Venice, London, these were crowded, vibrant centers of commerce and culture. Gothic cathedrals rose higher than anything built since antiquity, symbols of faith, engineering, and human ambition. People believed they were living in a world blessed by God. Even more importantly, the world was connected. For the first time since the Roman Empire, trade linked continents. A merchant in Venice could sell silk woven in China. Spices crossed deserts and seas. Gold, ideas, and technology flowed through vast networks protected by the Mongol Empire, the Pax Mongolica. It was the medieval version of globalization. But this interconnected world carried a hidden weakness. The same roads that brought prosperity could also carry death. The invisible enemy. The enemy humanity faced was not an army, not a kingdom, not a god. It was a bacterium. Far from Europe on the wind-stepped Central Asia lived Yersinia pestis. For thousands of years, it existed quietly among rodents, marmots, and ground squirrels, circulating harmlessly within nature. Humans were never meant to encounter it. But in the 1330s, the delicate balance of the steppes was disrupted. Climate instability, possibly drought followed by heavy rains, destroyed rodent food supplies. Desperate and starving, infected animals migrated closer to human settlements. Their fleas came with them. That was the moment the plague crossed into human history. The first victims developed sudden fevers, violent vomiting, and unbearable pain. Then came the buboes, swollen lymph nodes that turned black with blood and pus. Death followed within days, sometimes hours. The Black Death had begun its journey. Rumors from the East. News in the medieval world traveled slowly, but fear traveled faster. By the early 1440s, disturbing rumors reached Europe. Merchants spoke of cities in Asia vanishing overnight, of entire regions in India, Persia, and Mesopotamia left eerily empty. Europeans listened, but remained detached. These were distant lands, foreign tragedies, surely divine punishment for unfamiliar beliefs. They did not realize that the spices flavoring their food had traveled the same roads as the plague itself. The city that opened the gate. The turning point came in 1346 at the city of Caffa on the Crimean Peninsula. Caffa was a jewel of trade, a fortified Genoese colony linking Asian land routes to Mediterranean sea lanes. Inside its walls lived merchants from across the world, protected by stone fortifications and crossbowmen. But Caffa was under siege. The Mongol golden hordes surrounded the city, attempting to break its defenses. The siege dragged on for months. Then the plague struck the Mongol camps. Soldiers began dying in horrifying numbers. Bodies blackened, flesh rotted. The army collapsed, not from warfare, but disease. Facing defeat, the Khan Jani Beg made a desperate decision. He ordered plague-infected corpses hurled over the city walls. For days, the sky rained dead bodies. The psychological terror was immense, but the biological impact was worse. Fleas abandoned the corpses, spreading throughout the city. Caffa fell, not to soldiers, but to bacteria. The ships of death. panic consumed the city. Genoese merchants fled aboard their ships, their greatest advantage. 12 galleys escaped the harbor, carrying refugees, cargo, rats, and fleas. They sailed through the Black Sea, past Constantinople, into the Mediterranean. Every port they touched was unknowingly infected. In October 1347, the ships reached Messina, Sicily. Dockworkers rowing out to greet them encountered a nightmare. Most sailors were already dead. Survivors were delirious, covered in black boils, bleeding and screaming. Authorities ordered the ships expelled immediately, but it was too late. The rats had already disembarked. Europe was infected. Cities that stopped functioning. The plague exploded across Europe. Italian cities collapsed first, then France, then Spain, then England. Paris, Florence, Venice, London, these cities were densely packed, filthy by modern standards, and completely unprepared. Open sewers ran through narrow streets, houses blocked sunlight, people lived stacked on top of one another. Doctors had no concept of germs. They blamed poisoned air, planetary alignments, and divine punishment. They advised people not to bathe. They burned incense. They bled patients already weakened by disease. Nothing worked. Social order disintegrated. Parents abandoned children. Priests refused last rites. The sick were sealed inside their homes to die alone. Bodies piled faster than they could be buried. Mass graves, plague pits were dug. Corpses were stacked like laughterwood and covered with thin layers of soil. The sound of life vanished. Only church bells remained, until even the bell ringers died. Fear turns to madness. Faith intensified, but so did hysteria. Flagellant groups marched through towns, whipping themselves bloody, believing public suffering would appease God. Others searched for someone to blame. Jewish communities became scapegoats, accused of poisoning wells. Entire populations were massacred, despite official condemnations from the Pope himself. The Black Death revealed humanity at its worst. The world after death. By 1351, the plague began to burn out, not because it was defeated, but because there were not enough people left to infect. Up to half of Europe's population was gone. Villages vanished completely, fields lay unharvested, animals roamed freely. The medieval world had been hollowed out. But something unexpected followed. Labor became scarce. Peasants demanded wages. Lords were forced to negotiate. Serfdom cracked. The old order weakened. Out of unimaginable death emerged profound change. The medieval world ended. The modern world began. Closing. For centuries, the Black Death felt like a distant nightmare. But empty streets, locked homes, fear of the air itself, does that really sound like ancient history? The plague tested civilization, and history has a way of repeating its tests.